Well, I guess while you're eating, we can go ahead and at least introduce you a little bit. So the way I found out about you is I did a podcast with Erin Kreider. She has Women on the Fly, which is something she does on Instagram and Facebook. And she said that I should talk to you because you are into a lot of interesting things. Um, do you
Yeah.
have any? Do you have any association with Denver Trout Unlimited?
Yeah, I'm a Trout Unlimited member, and
Okay.
I know the Denver TU guys pretty well. And then Aaron's actually on the board of West Denver TU. So I know West Denver and Denver TU.
Okay. Yeah, she's a firecracker. She seems like she's a lot of fun.
She is. I can promise you that. I was
Yeah.
out fishing with her on Friday,
Uh-huh.
and she was trying to get her husband to land his first fish on the fly, and she's funny out there, just kind of nagging him, you know.
Well, it looks like he did it. From what I seen, he was
He
successful.
did. He did. Yep.
Uh,
I was in this eddy, and I was trying to show him how to just kind of dead drift a fly in this eddy and let the current do its thing. And I'm like, all right, this is what you need to do. And I instantly hook a fish, of course, you know. It's kind of how it always goes when you're teaching somebody.
so, did you grow up in Colorado?
I didn't. I actually grew up in Georgia.
Oh, really? How'd you
Yep.
end up? How'd you end up in Colorado then?
I was an outdoor junkie, and I wanted to find a way to move west, and it finally worked out with a job opportunity that I had. So managing the west half of the country, so Denver was the perfect option.
You say managing the west half of the country. What do you do?
So I'm in outside of running, fishing the good fight. I'm in sales and college football. Actually, I sell technology that college football programs use for coaching video and for tracking players.
Not only do you get to fish, help with mental health awareness, but you're also involved in college sports. The more people I talk to, the more I realize that I really missed something. All you guys have these incredible, lives that I have to live vicariously through. I talk to you people, and that's how I'm like, I get to experience a little bit of that. So, how did you get into the technology stuff?
Well, I played college football, so I played at Alabama. I was actually Nick Saban's first recruiting class.
Boo.
Yeah, there's not many people that like Alabama. I think they're tired of seeing us win, but and I get that. I'm tired of seeing the Patriots win, you know. But
I'm a Buckeye, so
yeah, then you probably dislike us even more. But
oh yeah, way more.
but yeah, so I played in college and used the technology that I sell now. Funny enough, so I've been in sales my whole life, and I've always stayed in sports. I got my master's in sport management and my undergraduate degree in business. So it was just a natural fit.
So that's interesting that you do that as a profession, but what you do with fishing the good fight is that a hobby or is that a passion that
It's definitely not a hobby. It's a passion. And, you know, we founded November 2019. So we're 14 months in now. And, you know, it's exploded. And so it went from a passion and, you know, a way to give back and helping the community to what's turned into a full, you know, time operation. And, you know, we have a chief operating officer that's helped take a lot off my plate. But it's still, I mean, it's basically two full-time jobs.
so how did fishing the good fight even come about?
So, me myself, I started dealing with depression and anxiety in high school, and like most men, I didn't know that I had an illness or something that could be treated. So, you know, I went about 12 years without getting help, and a lot of rough times in those 12 years. between getting hurt in college and ending my career, and some financial issues and so forth. And I finally got help. And, you know, in doing research, I realized just how many men, one, commit suicide because of a mental illness they don't even know they have. And two, just the complete lack of awareness amongst men to seek help and get any kind of screening. So, you know, it was really kind of my way of living what I had experienced and trying to fix it in some capacity. You know, 83% of suicides are men. They only make up 20% of people that actively get help for suicide, for depression, mental illnesses, or substance abuse issues. That average time between symptoms and seeking help is about 12 years. So, and it was exactly what I experienced. You know, I mean, suicide ideation, constant depression, you know, suffering in just my daily life over the course of that decade. And so we wanted to find a way to raise awareness, help remove the stigma around men's mental illness, and then provide resources for men that want to take action. But you know, men aren't going to take action unless they're aware of the issue. So, you know, that's what we're about. And at the end of the day, it's about making all lives better, because there's such a butterfly effect of men's mental illness on everyone in their lives and in the community, whether that's work, spouses, family, etc.
If you don't mind going back to what you said earlier, you started experiencing some of the depression and anxiety stuff in high school. What brought it on? Was it pressure from the outside to, let's say, perform well in sports, or was it just something that just happened?
It's something that just happened, you know. When it comes to mental illnesses, you know, a lot of the time it is derived from a combination of both. What's the right word here? Of societal norms, you know, abuse, whether that's passive or significant abuse in some form. But also a lot of it has to do with your genetic makeup, and a lot of mental illnesses are passed down and they are genetic. So for me, there wasn't really anything specific that brought it on. I had a great supportive family. I was very successful in sports and went to a great school and had a great group of friends. It was just something that happened.
When did you graduate high school, if you don't mind me asking?
07.
Okay, so you're just a little bit young. Shit, you're younger than me. I graduated in 04. Graduating and going to Georgia, were you in a rural or an urban school?
Urban. I lived in Atlanta, so
Okay.
I went to school inside the perimeter.
Okay. Now, were there special societal pressures in that area? I grew up in a very rural setting. So, for example, the school that I went to was actually a conglomeration of 5 different school districts that all got lumped together. But we were all just, poor farm kids that, we grew up running around barefoot and playing in the woods. Was it different growing up in the city?
It was. I mean, it's definitely more materialistic, and there's a lot of money in Atlanta. You know, so there's definitely more pressure, I would say, growing up in that kind of environment. And I went to a school that was, the number 5 athletic program in the country, and state championship after state championship, and so there's definitely pressure, and there's definitely a way you're supposed to look and speak and and behave in that kind of setting.
It seems like that kind of pressure would be very easy to fall into mental health issues, especially with the sports. You're talking a top 5 high school to go to college sports. That has to be immense.
For sure. And there's definitely some people I know that have also struggled, and yeah, it's not something I've really thought about a lot before, but yeah, I'm sure it's not healthy. It's definitely not helping. So I'm sure some of it can definitely be derived from that.
And then you mentioned you had a injury that ended your college career.
Mm-hmm.
Was it like a ligament damage? I assume that those are usually the
A
culprit.
hamstring, a
Okay.
hamstring. Yeah. I had I tore my hamstring almost in half, and from
Okay.
there, yeah, it was not fun. Tried to come back from it many times, but it kept reoccurring, and kept losing weight, speed, strength, and
No.
by the it was 3 years into my college career. I moved to what's called a medical scholarship. So you're still on a full academic scholarship, but it doesn't count against the team's scholarship number. So
Okay.
they can bring in another player, and it was something me and Nick Saban discussed in depth many times, and if it made sense, and finally it just did. I was a shell of what I was when I got there.
Okay, we're going to stray off topic for just a couple seconds. One, how cool is it that you get to say you talked to Nick Saban? That's pretty awesome. Whether I hate him or not, he's still a great college coach.
He is a great coach, and he's a great man. And I learned a lot, from those 3 years. And man, he drives work ethic into you and a process into you, and he builds men. He really does.
Topic number two, muscle tears are no joke. I just watched a video of a power lifter that was he tore his what's this muscle right here is
His pec.
yeah, he
Yeah,
was
oh yeah.
lifting and you saw it go thump, and that looked horrific.
It's no fun. And actually, funny enough, after college, I competed in powerlifting, and now I compete in Olympic weightlifting. So, I just became such a part of my life that I'm still doing the same stuff.
You're a monster. Okay. In the course of your studies of looking at men and mental health, especially how close you were to sports, have you followed like the head trauma issues that surround, we'll say, football?
Not a lot. It's something that my girlfriend and my family asks me about, because I certainly had my fair share of concussions. When I was playing, it's not something we really tested for.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you were crying in your locker room for some unknown reason, it was kind of like get back on the field. But no, it's something I followed a little bit. It's just sad, right? I mean, when you hear these stories of CTE with NFL linebackers and guys that end up taking their lives because of some of these traumatic brain injuries, it's something I followed a little bit, but we focus more on general population versus specifically looking at athletes, and obviously those kind of conditions are very specific to a high level of performance that most people never really experience.
Sure, I get that. And you obviously have stayed in shape, and you got to stay in shape to get outside and mess around in some of these streams and stuff. But um, how important is exercise to your daily regime and keeping your mental health stable?
For me, it's huge. It's been one of the constants in my life, and when you're dealing with depression and different mental illnesses, a lot of times you don't experience any joy from things that you typically do. And for me, that's lifting, and it's a huge therapeutic outlet for me, just like fly fishing is and fly tying. But it has more benefits than just being something I enjoy. I mean, it's something that it provides another goal. It provides a sense of accomplishment. There's a process to it, just like fly fishing or tying. You've got to be present. You've got to be focused. You've got to be in the moment. You can't be worrying about other stressors. So it's been a huge part of my overall health and my mental health for my whole life.
I think the sense of accomplishment thing is very important to men. So when you look at the area that I came from, it's a very poor area. There are very few jobs. Drug use is very high. All the indicators of a place that's struggling. And I can't help but always think that speaking as, just for a man in general, that we need some kind of goal to strive toward and a sense of purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
The men that you deal with on a daily basis, do they struggle with that sense of purpose?
Absolutely. Yeah. No question about it. And, it's when you're talking about male mental health, and, it is male mental illness is a silent pandemic in this country. It is a massive issue that's not discussed. And there's no question that sense of purpose and what is being a man today, what does that mean? It's something that it's confusing. There's so many movements out there promoting actively against any form of masculinity. And, it's confusing for men today. What is my purpose? I'm not a hunter gatherer, right? So is masculinity today, is it taking care of your family? Is it providing? Is it, is it your values? Is it your character? Those are things that men struggle with because, men like to judge themselves on metrics, right? If you're a sales guy, you judge yourself based on your quota. If you're a football player like I was in the SEC, your whole life you're judging yourself on your 40-yard dash, your bench, the number of tackles you had, and so forth. And I think a lot of men today struggle with that intrinsic self-worth. How do they really value themselves besides just putting a number on it?
And I can really relate to this because my wife and I moved to Colorado about a year and a half ago. And whenever we moved, we had this kind of understanding that whoever found a job first, the other one would stay home and take care of the kids. Well, my wife, she's an accountant, and she found a great job almost right away. So that it fell to me to take care of the kids. This is a position that I've never really been in before because I've always worked 45 to 50 hours a week. Right. And I fell solidly in that category that you just mentioned. I was a sales guy. I measured my worth on my metrics and meeting goals and exceeding goals. And all of a sudden, I lost that. Not that it was taken away. I made a decision to leave it. Right. Excuse me. But I found myself in this weird place where I had a hard time reckoning with my new metrics. My metrics now are, did I get my kid to eat his apple slices? Right. Or did we not have a meltdown today? Is the house clean? And honestly, this podcast came about as a way for me to, I guess, regain some of those self-worth goals. I set goals for myself for the podcast. I can see growth in the podcast, and it's helped a little bit, but it still is odd because it hasn't really filled that hole of me losing my sales job.
Right.
Right. It's a hard thing for me to reckon with, and I still struggle with it. I'm getting better. I understand now that, like you were saying, my place in this world, my place as a man in the modern world, is I am a caretaker. I take care of my family. It's just not financially.
Right.
And it's a shifting perspective, I guess.
It is. And I mean, props to you for starting to understand that. And, for me, it was, when football was pulled under the rug, it was, well, what the hell am I? That was I was an inside linebacker from the age of 7 to 22 years old, and that's what I knew. And that's what I did. And that's how I judged myself. And that's how people knew me, so, your whole identity can be stripped by something like this. And it's the same with a sales job or, that you get let go of, or, if you're a competitive lifter and you get hurt, it doesn't matter. There's a million different scenarios. And, it comes back to that beginning to understand how you value yourself as a man and what your character is, and the relationships that you have in your life. Because if you don't respect yourself internally without those metrics and they get pulled from you, you have nothing to fall back on.
Yeah. And you're right. You mentioned earlier, like, sitting in the locker room and crying and someone just going, come on, suck it up. Let's go.
Right.
while that isn't necessarily the best way probably to handle that situation, um, do you think there are any positive attributes to that form of masculinity of the tough guy of sucking it up?
You know, it's hard to say that there's no positives to it, right? I mean, there's positives and negatives to every scenario. Unfortunately, in society today, with the issue we're dealing with men's mental health and the number of men taking their lives, you know, for the most part, it's a negative. You know, we need more men to be comfortable talking about what they're struggling with. And you know, when we run men's groups and we get guys together and hell, we'll have a NFL coach and we'll have a CEO of, you know, a big technology company. And we get together and we discuss, you know, the challenges we're facing as men. We all have the same things. You know, we have our mask that people view us as in terms of leaders, outgoing, you know, confident, positive. But then when you really open up about it and guys start saying, you know, shit, I'm scared. You know, I have the hands of 15 guys' lives in my hands at work, or you know, I'm actually an introvert and I'm not that outgoing, and it's hard for me to be comfortable in social settings, and I get anxious about it. You know, you start seeing guys have the same things that we're all struggling with, regardless of where we come from. But going back to the, you know, brush it off and tough it up type attitude, yes, I think the positive of it is it teaches you to be tough, you know, and I don't think you can deny that that's a good attribute, you know. But I think the negative of effects of it far outweigh the positive effects.
Yeah, the negative aspects of just ignoring the problem and stuffing it down, just keeping it tamped down.
Exactly. And the result of that is that, you know, men struggling with mental health issues act out. Women talk about it. And so men are aggressive, they're violent, it leads to substance abuse. Men take action on these things. And that's why men are 8 times more likely to actually complete a suicide than women are.
Yeah, I was reading some of the little facts. You mentioned them right at the beginning. I did not realize the numbers were that high.
Most don't. You know, it's not something that's talked about a lot.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with, you know, most recently we had the shooting in Boulder. I mean, that's another gentleman that, from all accounts, seems to have had some sort of mental illness that went unchecked,
Correct.
and it led to that violent outburst.
Exactly. And the reality is that about half of completed suicides by men are guys that are not diagnosed with any kind of mental illness when they have one. You know, so, you know, our society has a big disconnect between, you know, recognizing mental illness among men, you know, and screening for it and being trained on it. And the men's health journal actually just started a 6-piece article on men's mental health and the massive issue that it is in our country, and you know, steps that need to be taken to try and address it.
Do you have any, I guess, professional education or any kind of training on mental health issues?
No, I don't personally, besides my own experiences. And that's why we lean on the therapists in the area
Hmm.
when it comes to our programming around mental health, and when it comes to retreats, when it comes to resources we provide. We have excellent partners in the area that we lean on for, you know, their professional opinions.
Sure. So I guess kind of circling back a little bit, you move out west. You're taking care of the west half of the United States, selling stuff. You're an outdoorsman. When did the idea come to you to combine your love of the outdoors and fishing and this issue?
So, you know, it's kind of funny how it all worked out. I got into backpacking and hiking a lot in Georgia. We have the Appalachian Trail, And my girlfriend's brother is an avid fly fisherman, and he leads excursions all around the world. And so he's like, "Hey, I've got this old shitty reel, here, mess around, go have some fun. I think you'll like it." And so started playing around with it in Georgia a little bit, moved west, and really got into it. And I found fly tying just from a free class at a brewery, and instantly was hooked and went down that rabbit hole really fast. And I work from home as a salesman, so some afternoons I go down to my local brewery and I'll bring my vise and I'll tie, and it's just a way for me to be social and see people in the neighborhood. And people started asking if I was selling them. They're like, "Wow, these are great flies. Do you sell these? Is this just for fun?" And I was like, okay, maybe we're onto something here. That people want the quality of hand-tied flies that are really done the right way with the right materials. And so for my birthday in 2019, one of my best friends incorporated Fishing the Good Fight is my birthday present. And so he's a lawyer, and he incorporated us as a 501c3, and he said, "All right, time to go." And so we didn't really know what we were doing at first. We were just selling flies, and we knew we wanted to help. We didn't know how we were going to help, and it's grown from there into something that's helped so many men throughout the country, and in the Colorado community.
Wow, what a friend! That's cool.
It's pretty cool.
Right. I mean, obviously you didn't know what you were going to do at first, and you're still relatively a fledgling organization. Was it a pretty short jump to just say, "Hey, we should have these men's retreats where people get together"?
Yeah, that's taken us 14 months to get to. At first it was just us donating to causes that we liked in the area, whether it was an affordable therapy group, and donating $1,000 to help their scholarship fund, or donating to help run a marketing campaign. But in this second year, after the success that we've had in our first year and the amount we were able to raise, we knew we really wanted to expand our programming and bring some stuff in house. So that's what led to us developing our own scholarship fund, which will launch within the next month, with running these retreats. But it's taken a lot of work and time and money to get to that point. It wasn't an easy process.
Have you ran any retreats yet?
Our first one is April 10th and 11th.
Interesting. That's awesome. That's close to my birthday too. Do you have some sort of outline for the retreat? Do you have any plan? Or are you just going to have people show up and see what happens?
Oh no, it's very planned. So cool enough, we one of the groups that Aaron works with is called Rare Waters. So they lease land from ranchers that have water running through their properties and allow people to fish them. So we're using one of their properties for this 2-day retreat, so that we're not dealing with any crowds. We're not dealing with the public. We're in a controlled environment. Beautiful space down in Lake George, Colorado, which is near the Dream Stream and an 11-mile canyon. And so we have one of our therapists that we work with in the area coming down for both days. So we're going to have a combination of 3 different men's groups sessions, talking about men's mental health and helping men recognize signs of them, speak to friends about it, deal with their own issues that they're struggling with. And then we have 3 fly fishing instructional sessions, as well as fly fishing time in between all of this. And then on the last day, there's actually individual check-ins with the therapists for men that want to dive deeper into some of the topics that we've discussed.
Do you have the guests that are going to be showing up prepare in any way? So, for example, I did a podcast with an organization called Huts for Vets, and they're specifically for military, retired police, those types of people that have suffered trauma and they're really struggling. So before they ever show up to the retreat, they have a list of books that they recommend they read, and then they pull things from those specific books related to what they want to talk about. Are you going to do anything like that?
We are. Yeah. So we have some different materials that will be going out to guys a couple weeks ahead of the first week of April. So about 2 weeks ahead of time that we'll be pulling from in those sessions. And then, there's a lot of different things that go into items they need to bring, what they need from us. It's a pretty detailed operation to run one of these.
As far as the fishing stuff, are you going to provide all the stuff they need to fish?
Mm-hmm. We do. Most of these guys have their own gear, so we just ask if they do need anything. But we provide all the terminal tackle, flies. It's basically like being guided, for 2 days. We have everything they need.
Awesome. What are you hoping, or do you have any expectations for the retreat? What are you hoping to see at the end of it?
Yeah, the expectation is that these men are able to come back to society with more tools around mental health, whether that is being able to speak to someone they care about, whether it's recognizing symptoms that they're experiencing, creating some rituals in their days that bring them back and connect them and get them present and mindful. So, we want a big goal is not only to improve their fly fishing skills and knowledge, and where we go into a lot of detail in fly fishing, but also to come back with those same kind of skills and knowledge when it comes to mental health.
It's interesting you're choosing fly fishing, because for me, sometimes I get so pissed off that it doesn't really help my mental health, but whatever. The worst is when you're in a back cast and you get tangled in a tree. My stress level immediately goes through the roof.
Oh yeah. I mean, hey, I'm self-taught. I've been there. I've been from not knowing what the hell a line versus leader versus tippet is to now tackling the hardest streams out west on a regular basis. But it's the combination of nature, the therapeutic benefits of nature, and there's a lot of science around that. And the mindfulness required and the presence required for fly fishing, because it really does take everything you have, to be noticing what bugs are popping off the water, seeing how the fish are behaving, watching your drift, making sure it's done, it's drifting the right way and it's not dragging. You just have to be fully there. And, we talk a lot about the differences in therapy and therapeutic outlets. Because therapy is such an essential part of any men's recovery that's struggling with mental health issues, but you need those therapeutic outlets as well. And those are activities where you truly are present and mindful, and you're focused on them, and you're not letting external stressors, jump into your mind. And fly fishing encompasses that about as much as anything in the world. Same with lifting, same with fly tying. You just can't be thinking about anything else.
And I think that's very important I think everybody needs at least one activity in their life that they can detach from the stress of everyday life. Because that's a very good point. It makes you focus on what you're doing. It's right in front of you. And all those external pressure factors just they go away.
Correct. I mean, if you're focused on other things, you're not going to catch a fish.
No.
I mean, that's the reality of it. Is fly fishing is a technical, hard sport. And if you're thinking about other things and you're focused on different stuff, you're not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be fun. You're not going to succeed in it.
No. And it's the same thing, big game hunting. I'm a hunter. I just started big game hunting out here. And hiking up in the mountains will have an effect on you that you don't really understand at the moment. First of all, you're gasping for air. I'm a biggin and I'm a flatlander, so hiking up in the mountains, really, I wasn't ready for that. It kicked the shit out of me. I was drained. Matter of fact, like the first time I went archery hunting, I went off trail and I was beating a trail through the backcountry, and I got into a series of deadfalls and ups and downs. And by the time I got back to the trail, I was almost in tears.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't worried about, how clean the house was or how mad the kids were going to be whenever I got home. The only thing I want to do is get to the car. That's it.
Right.
And having those types of activities in your life, it's just such a difference maker.
It is. And, there's a really good book out there called The Nature Fix. And, it takes, everyone's known for a long time that nature is beneficial. We've never really known why. It's something that helps people, and it gets them grounded. But this book is actually dives into the science around it in terms of senses, sight, smell, hearing, and all the different effects that, even just the noises we hear in day-to-day life in the city, how much they affect our brain. And it's fascinating. I mean, the power of nature alone, forget fly fishing, forget hunting, forget any activity associated with it, is a huge therapy for humans, and it's proven.
It's interesting the amount of white noise a person gets in their day to day life. Just the input, constant input. Is
Mm-hmm.
it's I think it's a relatively new thing to the human experiment, especially with cell phones technology. You try to set a timer on your phone, like on Facebook. I have like an hour and a half timer, a daily thing set
Right.
on my phone. And if I'm not careful, I'll hit that timer real quick.
Oh
And
yeah.
and before I had it on there, who knows how much time I spent just cruising technology.
Mm-hmm. And you're being mindless, right? I mean, you're just scrolling. You're looking for instant gratification. And that's what social media and that's what technology is.
Yep.
And so, nature's the opposite of it. Nature forces you to put in work and be present.
And the thing that I really like about what you're doing, I've spoken to a couple of different organizations that do mental health retreats, and the removing these people from their day to day lives and putting them with a group of people that are just like them seems to strip away that vulnerability layer. For example, like all women's groups are they they need those peers around them because they can relate to one another. There are no men there to try to keep appearances up with. Is it the same way with the men that you interact with? Like they just want to be around guys like themselves?
100%. It's absolutely, and we talk a lot about vulnerability. And I'm the first person that'll stand up and say, I have mental illness. This is what I struggle with. I dealt with suicide ideation. I dealt with severe depression. And they'll say, what? You're 6'3", 250. You were an inside linebacker at Alabama. You on national championship program. Like, what are you talking about? And it's like, yeah, I'm dealing with this, and
Mm-hmm.
anyone can be dealing. It doesn't matter. This is a silent and invisible disease, and that's what's hard about it. Is that it's not a broken leg. You don't see a cast. You don't know what other people are dealing with until you're vulnerable and they're more comfortable speaking about it. And that's 100% what we experience when we're in these men's groups. Is that we may start with, hey, who here has dealt with a mental illness? And, you look around, maybe you see a hand go up, who's struggled with depression or anxiety, who's dealt with substance abuse issues, maybe another hand. Um, but, by the end of it, and, after we break out into small groups and men share their own stories first, and that's how we always lead these things, is having men share their own stories first. Everyone opens up, and that's where we see people from 30 different backgrounds sharing the same struggles that they're dealing with, in everyday life, with their jobs, with their family, etc. And it's really powerful, when you see guys get the courage to speak about it. It's not an easy thing to do. And it's something that our society has to start embracing more, is encouraging men to speak up. We tend to romanticize mental illnesses and suicide and how sorry we are, when someone takes their life, but it's not. We make it very hard for them to talk about it, before they take that step, you know?
Absolutely. And it seems like those buzzwords, anxiety, depression, maybe if as a society we could find a way to reframe those for men, like I don't know, just finding a way that men can relate to those issues a little bit better. Who here has felt really bad when they didn't meet their sales quotas? That's a form of
Right.
anxiety. I mean,
Right.
but you're not saying anxiety. You're putting it in a way that they can understand and relate with.
Right. No, yeah. And, the other side of that is it's kind of, those words are also misused a lot, especially during the pandemic. There's mental health has come up a lot more with people being stuck at home and not having the regular social outlets and activities. So people say, oh, I've been sad, I'm so depressed, when they're not actually struggling with true depression. So there's kind of two different sides to that. There's one, yeah, how do we find a way to make it easier to talk about? But two, it's also, kind of creating a certain sense of respect for what these people are that have these illnesses are truly dealing with. Because, just being sad isn't depression, or just being worried about something isn't anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of two sides to it.
It's interesting. So, what are some of the symptoms that you've noticed or seen or experienced that delineate being sad from true depression?
Yeah, so there's a lot of them. Some are physical, some are mental. So from a physical standpoint, struggling to sleep or sleeping too much is a big one with depression. Just not being able to get into a normal routine with sleep, not enjoying any activity that typically has brought you, enjoyment in the past, is a definite teller. A lack of mental clarity is another one. So, people that are dealing with severe depression have a very hard time when it comes to just thinking and making decisions, and their cognitive abilities literally decrease by 70%. So they feel stupid, and that's something that was a big one for me. Was I was a sharp guy. I was a sales guy. I was closing deals and running and prospecting. But when my severe depression would kick in, I couldn't function at work. And so that lack of cognitive ability is huge. Struggling with appetite, that can go both ways. It can be it's typically under eating and not really having an appetite.
Mm-hmm.
But then your feelings of sadness, suicidal thoughts, or other ones that stick out.
Are the symptoms similar for men and women? Do they manifest themselves in the same way?
The symptoms are similar, but the reaction to them is where we differentiate,
Right.
and that's what we were talking about earlier, where men typically are much more behavioral in terms of how they cope with it than women.
Yeah. So they tend to slip into more destructive behavior, drug use, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And when even though men are 8 times more likely to take their own lives than a female is, and even when you have a woman take her own life versus a male, men are typically more violent in how they do it, for themselves and potentially others that are in the area. In terms, that can be shootings, that can be whatever. But typically, the way a man takes his life is much more violent than a woman.
So as you're walking through life, and maybe you notice someone that is maybe struggling a little bit, do you have any suggestions about how to easily approach that person and try to get them help that they need?
Yeah, and we have a lot of resources on our website. If anyone that's listening or watching, is worried about someone, there's a lot of resources there on things to say, things not to say, ways to approach it. But it comes down to not allowing surface level, responses. So if I'm concerned about you, I'm going to say, hey Zach, how you doing? And you're going to say, I'm fine, just like all of us do, right?
Yeah.
I'm good, and it's really just attaching the word, okay, how are you really?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how you're really doing. And it's things like, I've noticed that you've seemed down lately. Are you okay? Versus what's wrong with you? Why are you not, it's active listening. It's asking questions that are not threatening, that show that you actually care about how they're doing, and you're not trying to say that, hey, other people have it worse than you. Why are you sad? You know, it's taking that more compassionate approach. And like I said, we have a lot of resources on our website for anyone that's curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing for men to do, to be sensitive and sappy. I mean, what guy wants to sit down with their buddies and go, "Tell me your problems"?
Well, exactly.
And I mean, it's a mainstream, I mean, joke. The comedian Bill Burr has a whole bit on men being sensitive. I'm not going to repeat the joke because it's it's funny, but it's not appropriate for what I do. But it's, even though it's vulgar and coarse, it is right on topic, because the gist of it is, why are you telling me all your feelings? We're men, we don't do that.
Right. We want to talk about how many beers we pounded, what girl we were with, what deal we closed, and that's the reality. And, it's for our society to see any kind of drastic change in these statistics that are so awful. It's going to take men having these conversations with each other. There can be as much marketing, there can be as much, discussion with doctors, but men have to change the way they speak with each other and quit the BS, and have some hard conversations and be honest and vulnerable. Like, that's the only way it's going to really change.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but you're right. And it's something that I struggled with for a long time, after moving out here. Even though I was kind of hurting a little bit, one, I really didn't have anybody out here to talk to. And two, even though I had friends back in Ohio, I didn't feel like they deserved to be burdened with my issues.
That's a great point you bring up. I mean, a lot of men, that's probably the number one thing that prevents a lot of men from talking about it, is they don't want to feel like a burden. Just like you were saying, like when guys get together, they want to locker room talk. They don't want to feel like they're pulling the group down, that they're a burden. And that's the reality of the situation, is that women have these support groups, and women speak to each other, and women talk about their emotions with each other, and it's what society's taught. And men, on the other hand, have been taught the complete opposite.
No, it'll be a long road, but that's what it's going to take, I guess.
It is.
So for anyone that's wanting to find out any more information about your organization, why don't you go ahead and plug yourself, your website, where they can find you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're on all social media platforms, and our website's fishingthegoodfight.org. Our Instagram's Fishing the Good Fight, same with Facebook. You can subscribe to our website for updates on everything we're doing in the community, and ways that we're helping men, and ways that you can help or volunteer. You can purchase a membership that includes, a certain number of flies, year-round discounts, gears, just buying some flies. All of our proceeds go directly towards supporting our programming. So please check out our website, our social media platforms. Give us a follow. Feel free to shoot us a message. We're always there.
And do you have any other sites other than here in Colorado? Do you have any plans on expanding out of the state?
We do. Yeah. We really want to nail down these retreats in Colorado first, but we plan on expanding these into other states in the coming years. Our scholarship fund, which I mentioned earlier and is launching within the next month, that's available nationwide. So anybody that, is struggling to afford mental health services because it's not covered by almost any private insurance, they can apply for a 10-week block of therapy that we help pay for. So, and that's just based on some financial factors, income, and so forth. And so that'll be live within the next week, and that's available everywhere.
Sounds like you guys have all the bases covered, and you're really making some progress.
We're trying, one day at a time.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to add to finish up?
No, thanks for having me, Zach. Really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. Yeah. So be sure you go to fishingthegoodfight.org and donate, buy some flies. You have a good time.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right.
Bye.